and welcome to Turtle Tracks Podcast. This is your host, Brian VanHooker, and I'm here with George Goodchild, who was a character designer on the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series from 1987. George, thanks so much for being here. I'm really happy to talk to you.
Well, thanks for having me on, Brian. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, as the listeners know already, I am obsessed with the 1987 series, and I think some of the history of it gets a little muddied. I guess what I wanted to ask you first was, before we get into Turtles itself, how did you find your way into animation?
Well, it wasn't easy. I always wanted to get into the animation business, but at the time that I really got serious about it, there wasn't a lot going on in town. It was a dry spell,
Hmm.
so there weren't a lot of studios to hit up, and it was a constant calling and trying to make connections. And like I said, there just wasn't a lot that I could grab onto. And what finally my break was, I was dating a girl who worked with another girl whose boyfriend worked at Filmation Studios.
Oh, wow.
We were looking for what they would call, I guess, a production assistant for their ink and paint department. And I got his number. I called him up. He was really, really cool. And he said, "Yeah, come on out. I'll set you up with an interview." And I went over and I interviewed for this job. And the job was, when I got in there and I talked to the woman who was in charge, I realized that this whole department was just about 100% women, girls.
Oh,
And
yeah?
I'd be like the only guy in this department. So I was a little nervous about that. Today I wouldn't be. I'd be like, yeah, this is going to be great. But yeah, it just seemed a little weird. But I thought, you know what? I'm not going to say no to this, because this is my chance to get my foot in the door. So I interviewed, and unfortunately, I didn't get that position. But the woman I interviewed with, the department head, liked me, and she sent me over to another department who was looking for the same job, to fill the same type of a job. And that was the assistant animation department. And I did get that position. And from there, it was just, rocket ship. I learned so much in that department. It was awesome. So
What was the
got in.
production for that? Like, what was the show?
They were just finishing up Shira,
Okay.
Princess of Power. That was at Filmation Studios. And my job was to go in, and because we did everything on paper then, pencil and paper. And my job was to go through every single scene and find artifacts like pieces of dust or a leaf or something that might get missed by the art director, the color stylist, and make a copy of that. We did have Xerox machines at the time, so I would make copies, put it in a folder, and take it over to the art director so he knew to color key that, whatever it was. It could be like a pebble on the ground, but it still needed to have color.
Oh,
So I
sure.
supplied him with that information.
Now, so that was what, mid 80s, give or take?
Yeah, I think that I started there around 84.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 22, so it was 84.
And then, skipping ahead a little bit, how did you find yourself on Turtles? Because you started Turtles in season 4, right?
Season 4 on Turtles, yeah.
Yeah. So it's
But
90.
I was working with Fred Wolf before that. I was working on a show called the California Raisins Show.
Oh,
And
cool. Okay.
yeah, and I had also worked with Fred as an assistant animator, because his studio, they weren't doing much at the time either. I think Fred Wolf was actually working over at Disney on DuckTales. He was just
Oh,
trying to make money and keep the doors open to his own smaller studio. And when he would get little jobs like commercials and stuff, like Fred did the Tootsie Pop commercial, where how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll?
I did not know that.
Yeah, that was
That's like
Fred.
not a commercial.
Yeah, Fred did a lot of commercials, and I would help out whenever I could, assisting, doing assistant animation work or in between work. So I knew Fred, and he got the Turtles apparently, and then everybody started thinking, "Hey, Fred's back in business." So Will Vinton came and said, "I have a show called the California Raisin Show. It's all claymation, but I want to do a 2D cartoon about it."
Huh.
And that's when Fred said, "Hey, I need a character designer. You want to do it?" And I said, "Yep, I'll take the job." And I went into the studio. I was in house uh, working on that show first. And from when that show ended, I just carried over to the Ninja Turtles.
What was Fred like? Fred Wolf like to work for?
Well, Fred was tough. I mean, he'd been around the block a few times, so and he was just a tough guy. He liked to if a brawl was going to take go down, he was like, let's do it. But for me personally, Fred was like a second dad.
Oh
He
wow.
taught me a bunch of stuff, and he wasn't easy on me. But he basically taught me how the whole business of animation worked, all the different departments, how you did this, and this is how it was going to affect the next department, and so on and so on. So it was a lot more than just being a designer, a character designer. I got an education from Fred, and
Oh, very
he
cool.
was good to me.
Now, when you joined, so you joined the beginning of season four. What was what was you started out as a character designer on that show?
Yeah, because that was the job I was doing on the California Raisins. They just carried me over. I think the original, some of the original character designers, they left. They went
Okay.
on to other things, and so it left a slot. And I was in the studio. Everybody knew me, and they said, "George, you gotta like help us out here." And I said, "Sure, I'll do it." And that's how I got into that position there.
Now, this may be self-explanatory, but like, what did that job consist of? Was it designing new characters? Like, if a character put on a costume, were you designing that? Was it all the above, or?
Yeah, it was new characters. It was costume changes. They were working alongside. The studio was working alongside the toy company. The toy company was started to come up with other mutant type characters
Okay.
as a toy, and they wanted to insert them and introduce them into the show, into the cartoon show. So I would get one of the toys, and I would take that toy and I would have to translate it from a 3D toy into a 2D model sheet, character design.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any that like stand out in your mind? Like, I remember getting this toy and having to draw it, like, or any that were particularly challenging or anything like that?
Well, they were all really challenging because they were so complicated. They were always loaded down with all these like gadgets and
Oh yeah.
so all that had to be figured out, and then you had to be able to. They never wanted me to do more than two poses and maybe some expressions. I had to do the 3/4 rear pose and the 3/4 front because that's what the animators overseas they needed that at least. And we were on a tight schedule. We had to get stuff done, and I
Sure.
was the only character designer. And when a show got really heavy, then they would hire out for a freelancer to help out. But as far as the amount of detail that were in these toys,
Yeah.
that took a while to translate. But when it came to just doing incidental characters that weren't a toy, that was all me. I got the
Okay.
script, I read the script, and I just conjured up some character, acted it out in my head, and voila, I presented it to Fred and Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird.
Did you work with
And
David
they
Wise
approved it.
much, or was that kind of like a separate department kind of thing?
What was that? What was the first part of your
Oh, sorry.
question?
Did you work with David Wise much, or was that more of a separate department kind of thing?
That was a separate department.
Okay.
I didn't get the opportunity to sit up with the writers or most of the storyboard artists were working from home, things
Okay.
like that. But I was so busy, I really didn't have time to go into another department and socialize much. And so, yeah, I
Now
stayed.
you worked with Laird and Eastman a little bit with the corresponding designs, or
I didn't work with them directly. I worked with Fred, and
sure.
they come around and say, "Hey, how's everything going?" And then you're like, "Okay, these are the guys." So be nice to them. And they were great guys. They were really mostly Kevin Eastman. He
Okay.
was heavily involved. Yeah. So no, I didn't work directly with them.
No, I don't. I'm always curious about how those characters came to be because, like, some were in the cartoon but never a toy. Some were a toy but never in the cartoon. Like, I'm curious about was there official kind of coordination with that, or is it kind of informal?
Well, sometimes they would write up a character, like it would come, the script for the show would come first. And then I think it was Playmates Toys that was doing it. I think that was the name of the company.
Yep.
And then they would create the toy or the,
Okay.
or the prop, like the van, the turtle van or whatever, some weapon, whatever they needed. And that would be based off the script. And then other times they would just come up at the toy company, they would come up with the character or the prop, and then they would send that over to us and they'd write a script around it, a story around that.
Is there any characters that stand out to you that you designed that stick with you years later? No
Uh,
worries if not. It's been a while.
this, it's weird, but the one that I always remember doing was when the turtles, all four of them, became kids, baby
Oh,
turtles.
sure.
Yeah, I remember Fred coming to me and saying, we're going to do this episode, and the turtles become baby turtles, and they got to be really cute. And the hardest thing for me when it comes to character designs are babies and really pretty girls because it's cartoony. You want to exaggerate.
Sure.
You don't want to make a pretty girl look ugly because you've exaggerated the nose or whatever. And the same thing with babies, they got to look cute and cuddly. And it just gets to the point where you're doing like 20, 30, 40 different take shots at it. And it's like you got a pile of paper in the corner because none of it worked out. And you start taking pieces like, okay, I got the head right. Now I got to get the body right, but it still has to look like the turtles.
Sure.
And that was a challenge. And when it was finished, I was like, wow, that was great. The the icing on the cake is when Fred came in, looked at him and said, "Those are so damn cute. That's gonna work." I was like, "Oh
That's
my gosh, I earned my paycheck." You know,
I don't know if you noticed, they just recently made toys of those for the first time, of your designs for those.
I didn't know that, but I've seen some fan art where kids like to make versions of baby turtles, Ninja Turtles, and stuff like that. But I think I was the first.
Yeah, no, I mean there was
I think I was.
I can grab one here. There's a toy company called NECA that does like kind of more cartoon accurate toys. And
Yeah,
recently they came out with like
yeah. That
newer
that's it.
design the turtles.
Yeah, that's it. I
No,
remember
I
that.
did, that's so cool.
Yeah. So that one sticks out in my mind.
Oh, very cool. No, like I'm trying to think of what other one. Oh, there's I was bouncing around a little bit to some of your episodes. There was this one episode with where the turtles all dress up like gangsters. I don't know if
Yeah,
that rings a bell for you or not, but that was a memorable design.
yeah. That was yeah, that was a costume design for sure. And that stuff would come across my desk, and I'd be like, I'd read the script and go, "What? Okay, all right." And being a character designer, you have to be an actor. You have to kind of visualize yourself as that character. And even if it's an established character like the Ninja Turtles, I like to think of myself as being one of them and putting the costume on and what would I choose to wear, you
Oh,
know?
cool.
And then you got to do research like, okay, we're doing gangsters, so let's go back to the 1920s, the 1930s. What kind of stuff did they wear? I kind of knew all that because I'm a history American history lover, so I just anything like that is interesting.
Oh, same.
So
Yeah, I love American history. I'm a big like
yeah,
presidential history guy.
I like history in general. I
Sure.
just I it just you just get so much out of it. So
The another one for the turtle designs. I don't know if you remember this. There was when Donatello became the Dark Turtle, the sort of Batman-like design.
yeah,
I don't know if that one
yeah,
stands out to you.
that too. Yeah, yep, absolutely. Same thing. It's like you have something to start off. It's not when you get an assignment like that, it's easier because you got something to kick off of. It's not a blank sheet of paper. You
Sure,
know what the Ninja Turtles look like. You know what Batman looks like. So merge the two together,
sure.
and you're
And steer clear of any copyright infringement.
yeah, exactly.
Let's see. There's a few other characters. I'm also big fans of Bebop and Rocksteady.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and they had some fun costumes over the years.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There
And the
was
weird thing about those characters was because the toys were made to be able to stand up, they always had bent legs and bent arms, and they would be posed like that on my desk. And I'd ask Fred, or the art director, Can we make them standing up straight? No, just they look like they're crouching, so just make them look like that. And it's like that just looks so weird. I mean, who walks around like that all the time? Who does that? But they said, don't worry about it. Just draw what you see, and you'll be fine.
The
So I
foot
sort
soldiers
of,
were even worse. They were this sort of like the foot soldiers had this like hunch position and like
yeah, that was even
the arms.
worse. I don't remember working on those too much, but I'm
They
sure
didn't
I
have
did.
much of those. They were big in the first few seasons, but they were gone after a little while.
Yeah, they decided that they were useless, so they got rid of them, I guess.
Yeah,
They worked with Shredder.
yeah,
Weren't
yeah.
they like his henchmen? Yeah, yeah. I guess they probably, I don't know this for sure. I'm just guessing they probably used them up in so many episodes. It's time to come up with something new.
Well, they already sold those toys, so like
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
more mutants to make. So,
Yeah,
the first episode you did, at least if you started at the very beginning of season four,
yeah.
was maybe my favorite episode. It was Plan 6 from outer space, and the plot line is ludicrous. It's Bebop and Rocksteady go to New York City, and they become like the network heads of Channel 6. And there's a scene in there that fans love, myself included, where they're dressed up as potatoes. I don't know if that rings a bell at all, but it's just this most ridiculous costume, kind of like California raisins, actually, now that we're talking about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it does. It does ring a bell. Every time you mention one of these characters, it just like it's like a little screenshot in my head. It's like, bing, I remember that. I remember drawing that, and I
Sure.
remember thinking how weird. This is so strange. The show. I mean, what? I knew that it was going on when I wasn't working on it, and the California raisins were all food, and that was weird. But then the Ninja Turtles, like, what is? Oh my gosh, this is it, huh? This is what we're doing. But
I
I
think
gradually got into it. It's like this is kind of cool, actually.
I think we take for like I don't know, for people who grew up with it like me, I think we take for granted how truly strange those four words are together. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like it's a really goofy title if you think about it, right? Like
Yeah, it's a mouthful. That's
yeah,
why they broke it down to its acronym, the TMNT. I mean, it's a tongue twister almost.
yeah. Bebop and Rocksteady were also superheroes in one, which recently also became toys. I don't know if you remember those.
I remember them. Yep. You
And
have those?
I do have those, but they're hanging up.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't want to get them down, but they're there. They're
I kind of see them. Yeah, I see
yeah,
something hanging.
they're right here. They just recently came out with these.
Yeah.
Another one was you designed them as bunnies. I don't know if you recall that.
Were they actual bunnies or were they
They no,
wearing?
they were in bunny suits. Let me see if I can show you here. I've got this one here. It was the two of them in these goofy white bunny suits.
I don't remember that. I know I must have designed that.
Sure.
I just don't. That one doesn't ring a bell as clearly as the others do.
For villains, they had a lot of fun with those characters.
Oh yeah, they were two buffoons. It's
Yeah.
like you can do anything with these idiots.
There's another handful that I wrote down, like characters. I wonder if you anything comes to mind for them. If they do, great. If not, no big deal. Mona Lisa. Don't know if you remember her. She was like a salamander, Raphael.
Yeah, I remember her. Yep. Was she in love with one of the turtles or something like
Yeah,
that? One of them
Raphael. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I remember that character design. And there was an example of trying to make something that should be kind of ugly and grotesque, or at least not attractive, but it's a girl and there's a love interest. So
oh, you gotta make her cute. Yeah.
yeah, you want to make it cute, and it's like, dang, why do you got to give me this stuff? I just that's the hard stuff. And there was always, get that done. We need that by 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Sure.
Like, okay. And you never thought it was good enough when they grabbed. You had the production assistants come into my office and just like sweep it off my desk, and it's like it's not quite done yet. Yes, it is. Bye. You know, get on to the next thing.
Did you feel more comfortable with like gross monsters and stuff like that?
Yeah, I've been in the business doing character designs for so long. I can handle just about anything now. At least I hope I can. Um, but the one thing about it is you start it off, and then you have people, either the show creator or producer or art director, they're going to take a crack at it. They're going to have their opinion.
Okay, sure.
That's where it gets tough. It's like, go over something over and over and over until they decide that they like it.
Who
you
did you
know.
report to? So I mean, obviously Fred, but who was the? I guess it was the art director was the one who would decide.
Yeah, Frank Rocco was the art director
Was he
on.
there? He was there for most of the series, right?
Yeah, he was there most of the series, and Frank, uh, he had a good handle on the show. He knew what he wanted. He knew what Fred wanted.
Sure.
I'll tell you that. So he was able to relay that to me, and it helped a lot.
I'll have to see if I can
His
track him
guidance.
down. I think I've looked for him once or twice. I have to see if I can track him down because I love learning about the show because like I'm also curious. Like, so you guys for season 4, I think it was like six 40 episodes, maybe
Yeah,
more.
that was a big season.
3 and 4 were like so. The first 2 seasons are short. 3 and 4 they explode. I mean, how
Yeah.
did you guys keep up with that? Like, how did you create that many episodes in a year?
Well, that's a good question. That's what I was asking myself all the time. How are we going to keep up with this?
Sure,
And I'd have to let them know. I'd have to let the production team know that this is just too much. Sometimes you get a show there was only two characters to do, and it's like, oh, I'm going home early today.
sure.
But but most of them, there would be a list. They'd assign you a character breakdown list, and you'd have to go down and be like 20, 30, 35, 40 characters, and then you design it. And then you have to do the back view, and then if it was a really weird character, like if it had some weird way of talking and it had like its mouth was exaggerated when it talked, you'd have to show how that worked.
Oh,
So there
interesting.
were expressions involved, attitudes, and it would rattle me to think, can I get this done? And I think I had a week. And then I'd beg for another half a week, and they would usually give it to me because they knew it, it was too much for one person. But then there were those shows where it just couldn't be done, and I always hated going into their office and saying I can't do all this by myself. I felt like, oh, this is it. I'm going to get fired. I can't do this, and they're not going to be happy about it. They never did. They were always, that was one of the best places I ever worked. It was a small studio,
Yeah.
and everybody was like a family there. We all knew each other. We hung out with each other after work. Sometimes we always went to lunch together.
Oh, cool.
But when it came down to work, everybody wanted to do their best and they didn't want to fail. So that was always floating around in the back of my mind and everybody else's mind. You have to go and say, I need help. But Fred always knew somebody. He goes, let's call so and so, get him in here. And they would come in and pick up the slack.
I mean, I'm curious, what was done here as opposed to overseas?
We did all the pre-production work.
Okay.
We did we did the storyboards. Well, they wrote it, of course. We did the storyboards. The director did all of his work. He'd time it, a timing director, and then we'd get the scripts, and then it would be broken down into backgrounds, props, and characters, and that was all done here in the States, all done at the studio, unless somebody had a freelance section of it. And then that stuff would go to the storyboard artists so that they knew what the new characters looked like and what the environments looked like, and
Okay.
they would put that into their boards. And then at the same time that was going on, there was a cleanup department. Usually, I did all my own cleanup work. And that means I'd rough it out, and then sometimes you could send the rough out, and somebody would tighten it down with a marker or a pen or a pencil, just make it look nice, because that had to go to the color department, ink and paint,
Okay.
and Dean Ann Ross, Dina slash Hemming, she was in charge of color, and she would do the color markups, and then send it to her crew, and they would do we used paint back there on the cells back then, and that would be sent with the character designs, the storyboard, the color. We didn't do layouts. We didn't do background layouts, because the boards were so tight. They would just use the storyboard panels as the layouts,
Oh,
how the
okay.
scene was going to lay out. It was all for saving money and time.
Sure.
So they would eliminate certain departments and positions. And then we'd pack it up in a box and we'd send it over to either Ireland, or I guess it was Korea. They were doing the actual animation.
How much later would it come back? How many months?
Oh gosh, that's hard. I don't know. I think it was like 6 months or something like that. And I could be wrong on that. That would
So,
be a question for one of the production managers. They were the ones keeping tabs on that stuff.
Sure, sure,
But
sure.
it was fast. It was tight. Everything was tight. You know, go, go, go.
Any memories of a character called Tempestra? She was this woman who was in a video game. Leonardo fought her.
Yeah. Now she looked more human than any of the other characters I remember.
Yeah, she was just completely human, but like blue skin, but completely human otherwise. She just had this dress thing.
Yeah, I remember her. I
That
remember
was
her
a good one.
one too.
Also, oh, Shredder's mom is a favorite one of mine that I'm guessing you probably did.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did that too. Whenever somebody came in to freelance, they usually got incidentals. They picked up the slack for like crowd scenes and some guy walking in the background or you
Did
know
you guys reuse
all
the same
things like
background characters all the time? Or no?
what was that?
Did you guys reuse the same background characters all the time?
We did. I don't think we did it as much as that wasn't a common practice until later on. Other shows we did that.
Hmm.
I worked on the Fairly Odd Parents. We had to do that in the Fairly Odd Parents.
Okay.
I'm familiar with that show, but there were
Oh yeah. Great
hundreds of
show.
characters in that
Very
show.
funny show.
Yeah. So we did that for that show, but not so much for the TMNT.
Oh wow. You think that'd be such an obvious cost saving measure is like just reusing the regular background city people.
Well, you would if you could, but everything was so specific. It was like
Oh, sure.
this guy walking down needs to have a giant nose because they're gonna go up and tweak his nose or something, and but that would be considered an incidental, you know.
I see.
So, but what I could do was take those designs and work off of them, change the eyes, lower the ears, add a hat, that kind of thing.
Sure.
That would save time.
Anything come to mind for Bugman? There's a couple of episodes with this, like a superhero bug.
Yeah, that was a toy. I remember. I think that was a toy, and I remember by that time I was pretty much into the rhythm, and
Sure.
I was kind of I had caught my stride, and things were going pretty easy. You know, it's that same crouch pose, and it's almost like creating templates and just
Oh, sure. Yeah, it makes sense.
modifying here and there. So, but anything come to mind? Every time I designed a new character, I thought this is pretty weird. This is crazy. This is crazy. I don't know how much longer I can do this, but
What
it was a
about
great.
Hokum Hare? There was a character like in a fairy tale world. He was like a goofy, almost like a Roger Rabbit looking character. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yeah, and probably that's where the influence came from was Roger Rabbit.
Oh,
Was he kind
sure.
of fat? What? No, he wasn't.
No, he
I
was
was
slim.
looking at that character recently. Yeah, I was going through some old boxes. My wife and I are getting ready to build a studio for ourselves,
Oh,
and
wow.
everything's in boxes. Everything, all our this artwork and stuff. I had to drag the stuff that you see behind me out just so I'd have something behind me interesting, like you've got. But most of it's all in box. And I was looking through one box of designs, and that Hokum Hare character showed up.
Oh, well, so what do you still have from the show? That's so interesting. I mean, I see the crew jacket behind you.
Not a lot. I used to keep all the toys, but I have four sons, and so when you got four boys, you're not going to
Sure.
keep anything like that around. So all that was lovingly played with, and I don't know where that went. I think, and they're all grown up now, but they still come over and they'll snitch stuff and take it home with them and hang it on their wall. So they're always robbing me blind of stuff.
I
But
also see the Pee Wee picture behind you. Were you part of that series of art? Because that was the artwork on like the cards and stuff like that for Tops, right?
that poster was used to promote the Groundlings show, the stage play.
Oh, wow. So that's
And,
before the show.
yeah, and my wife, Gary Panter, and my wife are good friends. And Gary Panter did the poster. He was also the set designer, the art director on that show.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's my wife's. That's what one of the things that she worked on.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah,
The
that's where that. I think that actually hung outside the Groundlings theaters in like a marquee type case.
That's such a cool design. Those I know those drawings from like Pee Wee had these trading cards, and
Yeah,
it's kind of wacky art on it like that. So I thought that was from that.
yeah. It's a weird but great style.
Yeah.
I've always everybody that used to hang in my office at Nickelodeon, and everybody that came in would look at that poster and say, where did you get that? I've got to get one. I said, I don't think you can get those. I think that's like one of a kind. And I was
It's
always
very.
worried it wouldn't be there the next day when I came into work, you know? So, yeah, fun stuff.
You did a Turtles two-part episode called Planet of the Turtleoids.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Because that one was, I remember that one being a big deal for me as a kid because that was, it aired in prime time. It had two of the biggest, like two of the cooler villains, which is Groundchuck and Dirtbag, a Red Bull and a mole,
I remember
and
both
then
of those
the planet with all
characters.
these different turtles on it. Like that was a huge deal for me. That one.
Yeah. Now, wasn't that where they were more realistic type turtles and they were wearing
Yeah.
robes? Yeah. I remember I caught hell on that show one time from Fred.
Oh, why?
Oh, yeah. Because Fred would come by with a thought in his mind, and he'd stop into my office and say, "Hey, when you get started on these characters, do this and add that, and just something I want to throw out there, and see if you can make it happen. Never like do this or else. I just had a thought, do this."
Sure.
So I got to work on designing the turtles, the turtleoids, and I was talking it over with Frank Rocco, and I said they kind of seem like they'd be like a cult or something, doesn't it? Like something out of
Oh yeah, they're all kind of dressed in robes
so I
and
said
stuff.
they should
Yeah.
all be wearing like robes, and like they should maybe all make them all white robes and stuff. And I remember, and I'd forgotten that Fred came in and said, make sure that they have different colored clothes on. So I totally forgot about that. So we designed all these characters, had them all painted, and everything went across Fred's desk. And the next thing I hear these footprints thumping. I mean, they were on a mission coming down the hallway, and it was Fred. And he comes into my office. He goes, "What did I tell you about the color of the clothes?" And I was like, "What do you mean? What did you tell me?" He goes, "I told you to make them different colors." And I said, "Oh, Fred, he was so something else must have happened that day because he was way off the charts that day." And and he walked away, and I thought, I'm going to have a heart attack. I don't think I can do this job anymore. I'm having a nervous breakdown. I've got to take it easy. But yeah, I caught it for that one.
We never had that toy as a kid, but recently they came out with Kerma, the little purple, like the green turtle with a little purple robot. And I was like, I feel like there's almost like a Hanna-Barbera influence to him or something. They're very
Hanna
different.
Barbera. Yeah, that would you would be right because I loved that's what I grew up with, Hanna
Yeah.
Barbera stuff, and I that's where that was the studio that I wanted to work for, but they
Oh,
weren't
look.
doing anything, so there was no reason to go there at the time.
Oh, that's true. They didn't really. They kind of went out. Like they kind of didn't do anything again until the '90s Cartoon Network, right?
Yeah, they were getting Cartoon Network put together, and
Right.
Fred Seibert was behind all that, and I think, gosh, what was his name? The guy that created Chucky, he was running the place at the time.
Oh
I
shit.
can't
Don
remember.
something.
Yeah, he was an interesting guy, but yeah, they weren't doing too much. But I still wanted to draw Hanna-Barbera type characters, and so anytime I could slip something in to the show, I'd do it that
Yeah,
resembled something from
those Turtleoids ones, I
Scooby-Doo
thought
or
like
something.
it feels a little. I mean, it works because they're in outer space. It's a different planet, and all that. And it feels like something different and special. So I was like, I wonder if there's an influence there. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a total rip
No,
off of.
goodness, no. But I just meant like compared to the kind of like grotesque mutants that were normally on the show, they didn't look like that. They looked like something else, which I thought was
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Any memories of Mondo Gecko or Mutagen Man?
yeah, Mutagen Man. Yeah,
He
that
was like
was
a floating brain in a
wasn't too
jar.
bad.
Yeah.
That wasn't too bad of a design because we were at the same time we were working on the Toxic Crusader,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
and
Also
I've
Playmates.
done some designs of Toxie from Toxic Crusader. So when Mutagen Man came across the desk, it was either Mutagen Man came first or Toxic Crusader. I don't know which, but they helped each other out. I had already gotten myself,
Interesting.
engaged in that kind of a character.
Yeah.
So whatever came second, I'm pretty sure it was Mutagen Man, like with the banana peel on his head. And
That's
oh,
Muckman.
oh, is that Muckman?
And I did the same. Even me, I would do the same thing. So Muckman was the green kind of. He looked like Toxic Crusader.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Mutagen Man was like a glass tube with organs floating in it. And
Oh, God, that's totally different.
yeah. But no, but
Um,
like they have very similar names. Like clearly they were running out of names.
Get it. Anything with names, man, forget it. I'm probably not even going to remember your name after this interview.
That's
No, I
fine.
will remember your name. I promise. But I'm bad with that stuff. There's too many of them. Too
There's a
many different.
lot. There's a lot. And like I
Yeah.
said, as many as there were in the show.
Did Mutagen Man? Did he have a cylinder head with his eyeballs floating in there?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm with you. I
Yeah.
know what you're talking
Muckman was the one that had the trash can on the back. This
about.
is
Yeah,
Muck.
that was Muckman.
This is like this is Muckman. It's the glow in the dark one, so it's not your colors.
There he is. Yeah, there's good
That's
old
the one
Muckman.
that's very toxic, toxy like.
That's where. Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
boy, your fans are going to be giving you hell now. It's like, what? This guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
No, I mean honestly, your memory is like I've talked to people, and I love this stuff because I think it's interesting all the way around. But I forget I was talking to one of the writers of that show, and they're like, which one's the blue one? Talking about the turtles, like so it's
Yeah, it was so long ago.
yeah
I can't believe how long ago it was. It seems like it was yesterday, but it was a long time ago.
yeah. I mean, what is it, 30 something years now?
Yeah, there's a lot gone on between that and now.
Oh my goodness, yeah, you've worked on Toy Story and a million other things. Goodness.
Yep.
Now, I'm curious about something. If you remember, so season 8, the show had a big change in art direction going.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you recall that happening, why it happened, all that. I talked to Elliot Darrow a little bit about it. I'm curious about from your perspective.
Well, from what I learned, they wanted to go a little more superhero type,
Hmm. Yeah,
less,
Batman was huge then.
less. Yeah, yeah. I think Batman was going on over at Brothers at the time. We even ripped off the Red Skies from them. Totally, man. Well, he's like, well, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here. So, it's cool. Let's do it. They don't own that. So we use that. And I remember Fred saying to me, I want you to take the turtles and I want you to put more anatomy into them, a little more definition in their muscles and things like that. And I want them to have more attitude like badasses.
Sure.
Less, we're moving beyond the little kid friendly, sort of soft type character look and design. And we're going to get a little more, we're going to try and get the older crowd too. And I said, okay. So at that time, I was working freelance. I decided that I was going to go out and try some new stuff, but he called me back in to do this. And I remember designing Leonardo, and there's a pose of him. I think it's on one of my website pages where he's just kind of standing there all tough like and
Oh yeah, and it's that poster where it's a green turns to red. Or, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
yeah, and I showed that drawing to Fred, and he said, "That's perfect. That's what I want to do. That's what the creators. That's the direction they want to go in, and that's what you're talking about. So we got a little more dark, not
That's
real dark, a little more dark.
I mean, some people speculate that the movie was more of an influence then. Is that the truth, or is that just us guessing?
Yeah, I don't know. That was never relayed to me. That was never brought up to me. So I don't know if that's true or not. But could have. People loved it, and they said, "Hey, people, they're digging the movie, so let's carry it on to the cartoon."
Sure.
It's a real possibility.
Yeah, they're slightly more angular, more muscular for sure. They also have the little space around the eyes. They all
Yeah,
a little bit more hard edged.
yeah, just a little more tough. A little
Yeah.
more like I'm a superhero instead of just this little friendly turtle.
Yeah,
But
like before that, the designs are like the designs they use for the first 7 seasons are more like kind of almost chunky and cute.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think I don't know actually who designed it. I think Fred had a heavy hand in those. He designed. I know he worked on April, and he did a lot of the turtle poses in the beginning. We'd get a model sheet, and I remember looking at the stuff in the model sheet, thinking this can be so much better. We could do something a little better here.
Hmm.
But it was like, don't touch those models. Those are Fred's. It's
The
like, well,
turtles.
yeah, the turtles.
I've
April.
wondered that forever because I've never been able to get a clear answer on two things, which is who designed those turtles? Because they're quite a leap from what was in the comic books there.
Yeah, I think that was Fred, and I think Fred was so clever with knowing not just the audience, but knowing what the networks and whoever they were going to present it to get money to do it. He
Sure.
knew what like or what they would say. That's no way are we going to do that, but yeah, we'll do that. He knew.
Hmm.
And so I think that was his influence. He said the comic book character version of the Ninja Turtles was just wasn't gonna work for TV cartoons.
Also,
And
wondered where there's a conflicting stories as to who came up with the separate colored masks because in the original comic books they were all red, and like it seems like the early production of the show, I think Peter Chung did the opening credits, but I don't know how much characters he designed to the. Maybe it is Fred. I'm so curious. Maybe it
I'm
must be
pretty
him.
sure. I'm pretty sure. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Fred.
Oh wow, I like I've wondered that forever because like they're still the most iconic takes in the Turtles
Yeah,
even today.
absolutely.
So like and it was unclear where it all kind of.
Well, when you think about it, he was Fred was a he'd have to solve these problems. So if you had four turtles that looked almost identical except for the weapons they carried, how are
Yeah.
you going to discern them from one another? And so, he would come up with solutions to that. And I think he was responsible for the letters on their belt buckle and things of that nature.
Oh. Yeah, that those are a few things that like some of those details get lost, but that's interesting to know. Because I mean like the art direction for that show is so like far removed from the comic that it's this totally different world that he created there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
Did
now
you,
people are like, let's see the comic version. Let's see the comic book version on TV, because
yeah,
everybody's grown up now. Everybody's in their, I don't know how old you are, like probably like 40 something,
38.
38. So you guys all grew up with it.
Yeah.
You know more about it than we know about it
Oh
even.
yeah, yeah.
And they're like, let's see it. Come on, somebody come up with it. And Nickelodeon, they got a hold of the property and they've been trying to do something with it, but it's like, wow, what are you guys doing? You know,
The
trying to keep.
yeah, I mean they do relaunch it quite a bit to get different takes on it and all that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean
killing it.
this show stunningly, your show went for 10 years, which was unheard of even then.
Yeah, that's where I come in. I'm considered a good luck charm.
Oh really? Okay.
Get me on your crew, and your show's going to go a good 10 years.
I mean Fairly Odd Parents went a hell of a long time too.
Yeah, we went a long time with Fairly Odd Parents. Yeah.
Now, redesigning the whole show to the darker version, was that like an opportunity to kind of put your own stamp on it, or was it more of a pain in the ass to kind of slightly adjust them like that?
As far as me personally, my stamp on it,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. It was
cool.
like, yeah, it was kind of refreshing.
Sure.
I liked, I used to read comics, Marvel comics, and I wasn't very good at drawing that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But the Turtles allowed me to kind of take what I knew how to design as far as superheroes, but they were still cartoony. So I
Yeah,
could kind of merge and it would be kind of faked, like, hey, you don't know what a turtle would really look like.
right.
Doesn't look like Superman, okay? It's not a human character. So I
Sure.
could get away with all kinds of BS like that, right? And yeah, it was a lot of fun to do something a little different.
Did you design
And I
Lord? Oh, sorry.
once had Stan Lee. Stan Lee, I went to his birthday party about, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I told him I was working on, I showed him some stuff that we did on the Ninja Turtles. He said, that is great. That's a great design. I don't know if you know about Stan Lee, but we
Oh,
called
yeah.
him the
Was this
because
so?
he
You said
always like
this was back then, or this was 6 or 7 years ago? You said.
a little bit afterwards.
Wow.
And he said, what have you been doing? And I said, I worked on the Ninja Turtles. You worked on the Ninja Turtles? And I said, yeah. He goes, which one? I said, the first one. And he goes, oh, yeah, that was a good one. You kind of like thinking, yeah, I don't know about that for lying to me, I felt. And I said, but I said, we beefed it up a little bit. They looked like they could be in one of your Marvel comics. And I showed it to him. I had something on me that showed what they looked like. And he goes, oh, that's great. That's really good. That
Oh,
looks great.
wow.
Yeah. So I don't know if he was just being nice, but
Sure.
he seemed genuine. He seemed
But
like
that's
what he was.
cool though. I mean, he's the well, he was. I mean, I've heard from a couple other people who knew him. I think Larry Houston I spoke to about this a little bit that he was very much that same person that he is on
He is
screen.
he was the greatest.
Yeah.
What you saw was what you got, man. And everything he says, I don't know, with his superheroes, everything that made his superheroes what they were was gamma. He goes, now I don't know what gamma really is, but it's what makes these guys what they are.
My
Gamma is
favorite is his
involved.
his I think I remember reading his reasoning for creating the X-Men was that he got tired of just Gamma and all that stuff for
Yeah,
creating heroes. He's like, they're born that way. Who cares?
yeah, that sounds like what he would say. Totally.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Did you design Lord Dreg, that big villain who was in the last couple seasons, that bug-looking weirdo guy with the big head?
I don't think so. I think that came later.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I wasn't sure
I
if it.
think, yeah. There was a crew that came in after once I decided to go be a maverick, go rogue, and left the studio. They had to have a new designer come in and a new art director even. So they took it somewhere else. They not completely different, but they carried it on. But when anybody new comes in, they always put their stamp on it.
Sure. Well, they also
Whether
did
it's
the thing where they like turned into monsters, but that was probably. I'm guessing that was after your time
yeah, I
there.
think it was. I
Yeah.
don't remember that one.
All the turtles, like basically like the Hulk. It's just the Hulk. So they
Yeah,
all
that
the
could have
Hulk
been a
monster.
guy named Kyle Mankey.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, Kyle Mankey was an interesting cat. He came from like Iowa, right out of the cornfields of Iowa, this kid. And he was a genius. He was really good at storyboards and he just came in as like, I don't know what kind of training he had, but he sat down at the desk and just bang, went to work. And it was like, okay, it's the time to hand the baton over to this dude. And he did a great job. I think he even won like an Emmy off of it or something. It was
Oh, wow.
I think, yeah, it was like, who are you? It's like another superhero.
Sure. So you weren't around when the series ended then, were you?
Well, I worked up till season 10. Was that, I think, but that
That's
was
the
it.
last season, yeah. I was curious if you had any memories from the show wrapping up or anything like that.
I remember people were getting tired,
Yeah,
looking to do something new,
sure.
something different. So everybody was ready. But there were other shows coming through. So we had James Bond Jr. going on. We
Okay.
had, what was the other one? Speed Racer. They were doing a revamp on the Speed Racer. So a lot of everybody's attention was on those shows. So when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ended, it just kind of merged. It was like just transitioning out and transitioning in. We were all still there.
Oh,
We all
sure.
same people coming and going. So it wasn't like, oh, it's over. Goodbye. Nice working with you guys.
Just now we're
It
going to
was,
call these guys instead of those guys.
yeah, it was a peaceful death,
Sure.
you know. Died in its sleep, man.
Any other memories come to mind from working on the Turtles? Anything that stands out to you?
I'll tell you a good story. And
Please. Yeah.
yeah, this is to me, it was interesting. When the Turtles came to be, I guess Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird were pitching it, schlepping it around town to all the different studios. And they took it over to Disney and they tried to sell it over there. And Fred Wolf was over there at Disney. He was working on DuckTales. And he sat in on the meeting for this pitch, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And of course, Disney being Disney, at the end of the meeting, they said, yeah, this is not what we do here. We don't do this kind of stuff. And they were bummed out. And Fred was just sitting sitting in the sidelines there, quietly listening to all of this. And they packed up. Peter Laird and the other guy packed up all their stuff, and they were heading out to the parking lot. And Fred followed them out and said, "Hey, I was in the meeting, and I like your idea." And they said, "Oh yeah, well, who are you? What are you going to do?" They said, "No." And he goes, "Well, I have my own studio, and I might be able to help you guys out with this."
Oh, wow.
And they said, "Really?" And they got all excited, and they said, "This sounds great." And they had a little talk and blah blah blah. And he said, "Yeah, we'd love to come over to your studio and see your operation and let us know when we can come." And Fred says, "Yeah, just give me a couple of weeks and we'll have you over and we'll talk about it." Well, at that time, Fred had nothing going on. He just he just had like one gal sitting there answering the phones. So he put out the all point bulletin to everybody and anybody that he knew that was available. I got the call to come in to the studio and sit down and act like you were working. So there were people at the drawing boards, just drawing crap. And, so it looked like a fully functioning, successful studio. And he invited Peter Laird and all the other people that had everything to do with the Ninja Turtles. They came in, they walked around, did a little tour, and they're like, wow, this is a happening studio. And not knowing that nobody was doing anything. And they left out of there, and Fred had the deal.
That's amazing.
And he said, okay, guys, thanks for coming and making us look good, putting on the show. And from there, they made a deal with Fred, and he got it. He took it on its way.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah. Now, I didn't actually get to go because I was busy. I wasn't in the studio, but I know from firsthand, people that were there, especially the gal that was answering the phones. That she was like the only employee at the time. She told me exactly what had happened. I wanted to go and help out, but I was working at Warner Brothers on Box Office Bunny or something like that. And it was all animation assistant. There was no time. I was working like almost 23 hours out of the day on that. So I wasn't able to help out, but it was classic Fred, man.
I love that. That's
fantastic. Yeah.
I think my last question for you, and this is what I ask of everybody, is who's your favorite turtle and why?
Oh gosh, I think it's a close between Raphael and Michelangelo. Okay. Michelangelo because he's got all the funny, goofy stuff going on, but Raphael because he's a wisecracking dude. I love his, and also because Rob did the voice, Rob Paulson, and he's a really good friend of mine. And
nice.
Rob and I have traveled the animation path together for a long, long time. We've done a lot of shows together. He's done voices and I've done character designs. Huh?
I was realizing, yeah, you have. Goodness.
Yeah. He did Mark Chang on the Fairly Odd Parents and a whole bunch of crazy things. And he was on the Addams Family. He did this character called Norman Meyer, who was a neighbor for the Addams Family. I mean, Rob's done everything. And he's a talented dude. Beautiful human being. He's never heard him say a bad thing about anybody. And he was just getting started like me, just getting going with his line of work. And that's why I like Raphael, because why I like that particular turtle, because it reminds me of Rob. That's Rob. That turtle is Rob.
Oh, yeah. It's very much like the Raphael in future versions would be much angrier, but that's very snarky. It feels like Rob Paulson. It really does.
Yeah. So that's my answer to that question.
That's so cool. I love that. I think I'm all set here. Thank you so much for your time and the script. I really appreciate it. This is great.
Well, thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate it, Brian.
My pleasure.
When the evil shredder attacks, these turtle boys don't cut them no slack. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Splinter taught them to be ninja teens. He's a radical rat. Leonardo leads, Donatello does machines. That's a fact, Jack.